field of personal development, she has developed a neuroscience-based method that balances the nervous system. She's here to share insights on how to stop self-sabotage. Please welcome Cindy Kohler. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thank you, Daniel. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Well, you made my life easy by reminding me that your surname is just like cola, Coca-Cola.
It's too easy. My dad's nickname was Coke, so yeah, it looks complex, but it's a lot simpler once you get your mouth around it.
Here in Taiwan, most people have three names. So when I came here, my wife's grandmother, she said, "Why did your husband name himself after a cat?" And my wife asked me, she said, "You got a cat's name?" I said, "Daniel," I said, "it's out of the Bible." I said, "There's millions of us." And I said, "How did your grandmother come up with that?" She said, "Well, Hello Kitty's boyfriend, his name's Daniel." So he's a cat. And so she said to me, "Your name's just boring and it's bland." I said, "Okay, well, why don't you give me a new name?" And they went to the master. The master looked at my birth chart, where I was born, time of birth, and they said, "We've got a new name for you." So they gave me this new name. And I asked my wife, "What's my new name?" She said, "Daniel." I said, "Daniel." 3 words, Daniel. Yes, I said, "What does it mean?" She said, "It means Daniel." And I said, "So you went to all that trouble to tease me about my name just to give me Daniel, which is Daniel?" She said, "Yes, it's a very good name."
Welcome to Taiwan, mate.
So we've got 3 names here. And if you don't have a middle name, like I don't have in Australia, we're poor. So you've got to have 3 names to be rich.
Okay.
So when you get here, we'll have to give you a 3rd name.
I've got a 3rd name. So I've got a middle name. So I could probably just hang on to that.
Hold on to that. And I say to my kids, I say, people call me worse things than my name. You don't have to worry about that. I love the name of your business, Mind Garage. Where did it start? How did you get into this 30 years ago?
Yeah, Mind Garage has been around for, roughly 12 years. I started it when I had other businesses. I had created and sold 4 different award-winning businesses. So I've been in business for 25 years, and Mind Garage sort of, osmotically came out of that period of time because I was approached by various different people who were looking for business mentoring as well as, some private coaching. And so I formalized it and did some certification in the coaching area and did some more studies in that space. So it became a natural evolution to pick up some one-on-one coaching as well as some workshops and keynote speaking. And when I was thinking about a business name, I have meditated for over 40 years and studied mindfulness and mindset. And I am particularly fascinated by our internal state and the power that our mind has over us and how we can work with it. So Mind Garage was an easy pick because it also matches with my love of cars. I am a complete car geek. Probably inherited again from my father. But yeah, I have navigated, raced road rally cars, and I can bore you to tears talking about all sorts of cars. So garage is one of those places that we go into to, to potter around, to fix, to explore, to find things. So
you better tell us what your favorite car is.
Favourite cars, I can't bring it down to one. I probably have to bring it to 5, but definitely it's going to be an Aston Martin in there somewhere or other. Yeah, definitely going to be a Porsche in there as well. And one of the cars that I've had is a Morris Minor 1000, which was my mum's first car. That's one of my favourite cars.
Did you crank it up? Did you get out the crank and crank the engine?
Didn't have to crank it up, but it did have wind down windows and it did have little trafficators that flicked out on the side to let you know that you were turning the corner. She was beautiful. Her name was Maureen the Morris Minor.
My brother had a Morris Minor 1000 Ute. So 2-door, with ute, which was really rare. And we would drive it to school. And because it was a 1000cc engine, you could key start it, but you could also crank start it. So
Oh,
to
okay.
stir up the kids, we would at school would get the crank start out and would crank it up before we left school. But it also had three subwoofers. There was two 15-inch subwoofers in the tiny little cabin of the Morris 1000, and then a 17-inch subwoofer in the boot. So you could hear the bass drops from about a mile away.
I was going to say, oof, that's big. That's a lot of noise for a
Yeah,
little
Morris
car.
Morris 1000. Okay, I've never met somebody else who's had a Morris 1000.
Yep. She was beautiful. She was beautiful.
They don't make them like they used to.
No, definitely not. That was she was only a little car. And I think, when you're sitting at the traffic lights and you've got various cars around you, I don't think I ever beat anybody across the side of an intersection. So um, I even people walking got a fairly good head start on us. So she was small, but she was powerful.
I'm sure there's a lot of similarities between working on a vehicle and working on a human. What's the connection that you see between the mind garage and a mechanic's garage?
I think it's a place, at a mechanic's garage. We go in there with a problem and we're looking for some guidance about a solution. We say that, this is something that's not working in the car, from a car's perspective and a mechanic's perspective. And we take it into an expert and we get them to sort of provide us with some solutions. And I think in my own garage, I find that business owners and elect professionals sort of come to me saying, look, something's not working in my business and or in my life, and I might have a bit of an idea. It sounds like this, it feels like this, it looks like this, and they just need a bit of a guidance in terms of how we can unpack things and have a look at it and pull it apart a bit and then put it back together in the way that they want it put back together to get where it is that they want to go. So it's an assisted sort of problem solving process, very similar to when you take your car to a mechanic. Um, I think the mechanic has a bit more of a, you know, authoritarian, like I'm going to do it this way. That's probably the key difference. It's very much a partnership when you're working with a mindset business coach like myself. It's about a key working partnership where we go down that path together, and I provide the support, the direction, the framework, the possible solutions, but the individual is empowered to make their own decisions about where it is they want to go and how they want to use that information. So that's probably the key differences. Mm.
You were mentioning just a few moments ago that people would approach you and ask about coaching. And I think a lot of people want coaching, they want support, but they don't know when to ask for it. For your type of coaching, what are some of the turning points or crisis points in people's life where they finally actually take the first step to reach out? What does that look like?
It's a great question, Daniel. Thank you for asking that. I find it's a number of different things. It could be, and if we go back to the analogy of, we could be of cars. It could be that something is, running rough, so that they know that they've been trying to do something within their business, and they know where it is that they want to go, but they haven't been able to get there on their own. So, give you an example of a couple that came to see me. They had three stores in a very specific franchise, and they knew where they wanted to go, but they were deeply in the business and they were really getting caught up in the day to day logistics, and they were really getting caught up in some really sort of messy relationship stuff as well. And they were really getting caught up with some of the HR issues that they had in their company. So they were very clear about, look, we know we want to go there and we're here at the moment, but we've been staying in this spot for the last 12 months, 18 months, 2 years. So that would be one of the key things that I'd see. People would come and see me when they feel a bit stuck. And the other thing I see is with people, they're actually lost their joy for what it is that they do. So, they know that there's a clear reason behind why they started the business, and they had a clear passion then, but they're right in the messy middle of what is business. And for those of us who have been in business for a long period of time, myself for 25 years, that at the start there's lots of fanfare, and people are yelling in your corner going, yay, you're starting a business, isn't that terrific? And towards the end, when you sell a business, or you step out, or you have some big success, or you win an award or something, that's like, yay, well done you. But it's when we're in that really long messy middle where people feel like they're in it on their own, and they might feel like they're just losing that passion because of the nature of good business, that it is more like a marathon than a sprint.
Mm.
So I think there's probably those two things. People aren't getting what they want, they're not getting there fast enough, or they've really lost the direction and the joy in the business that they're looking for. Those would be the key three things that I see in people. They find that they're kind of tripping over themselves in that space.
And I think some people, they take their car to the mechanic because they feel it's not going fast enough. This car's too slow. It's only got 5 gears. I need a different gearbox. The clutch is burned out. The brakes aren't working. I need a shot. I need a turbocharger. I need some nitric oxide. I need a boost. There's so many similarities there between what business owners want to be able to get through that messy middle.
Mm-hmm.
And I was in aviation. And in the aviation industry, if the pilot had any concerns about the aircraft, he didn't leave the cockpit. He didn't jump inside the engine. He didn't hop in the belly of the aircraft. He called his engineer. The engineer would come in, and the engineer would take a look at the aircraft. And I think for a lot of business people, at the start, we have to do everything. We start with one person and we've got to do it all. And then slowly we can delegate it, but we get used to doing it all. And I know there's that frustration for myself where I'm a fast moving person, but I delegate something to a slow moving person and I'm trying to push, 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 push.
Mm-hmm.
And that becomes frustrating. But we've got to realize that people are complex, people are also different. And we've got to learn to adjust as leaders to many different styles. There was one business owner in America that I saw recently, and she had built a cosmetics business, built a big team, 50 million US dollars in revenue. And she would wear a black shirt to work with big, bold white letters on the front that said dead inside. And I asked her, I said, what does that mean? She said, I had no idea what this business would take away from me. I thought it was going to give me all of my hopes, dreams, wishes, but it didn't. It gave me a lot of headaches. And I think that's the messy middle that she was stuck in. How do I get through that so I can start to enjoy it once again? I think we're all looking for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's some real, there's probably 8 different key mindsets or identities that we can hang on to that really are our handbrakes in our businesses. And that's the area that I'm particularly interested in unpacking with people. And like the handling it all, that control thinking can become really fixed, and it can lead us to stay in a space of, if I don't do it myself, it's not going to get done properly. And I think that can leave us really stuck in a space whereby we don't actually, when you don't delegate, you don't get the chance to work on the border stuff in your business, and you really miss some key things by stepping out and observing those things. And the beautiful thing as a coach that you come into is kind of have that helicopter approach. You have objectivity. There's less emotion because it's not my business. You can sort of sit above a business and say, well, if you just did this little thing,
Mm-hmm.
can you see that this? And generally, business owners go, oh my God, I didn't see that. It's so obvious. It's because they're so deeply involved in that mindset of being right in it. Um, and I think that, that control thing is one of those key identities safety traps that I have to handle it myself, that business owners really get stuck into.
Mm.
And that's one of the things that, we kind of question, well, where did that come from? Where did those beliefs first come into your life? How is that helping you now? Is that healthy? Is it unhealthy? Do you want to keep it? Do you want to change it to something else? That's one of
That,
the things that
that
really comes.
control mentality is coming back to the driving analogy. I like to drive. I like to be steering the vehicle. I like to be in control. I hate going in other people's cars. I want to take over. And I said to my wife recently, I said, when we move back to Australia, you're going to have to learn how to drive. I said, but I don't want to be in the car with you. she's 46 and never driven in her life. I said, I'm not going to be on the road. I think we've all had that. We're teaching somebody how to drive and we want to put our foot on the clutch. We want to put our foot on the brake. We want to put our foot on the gas. We want to hit the blinkers. We want to grab the steering wheel.
Yep.
And sometimes I think we don't think people are as competent as us.
Yeah, and I can feel that might be the biggest control freak, on this planet at some stages. But I know in business that really was a handbrake to my own growth, because if I didn't invest in people and with great training and great education and the right people in the right places at the right time. Don't get me wrong, you've got to get that foundational piece right. Selecting really good people, selecting experts that knew more than me was a really good lesson for the ego. Delegating to those experts that I brought into the business to say that, you are much better at administration, or you're much better at management of this particular task, or you're much better at IT, and then trusting them to do their job without micromanaging them is really necessary if you're going to take your business from a one person piece to running a team and or to having many sites, however it is you want to you know however it is you want to describe or create your business.
Mm.
Yeah, it is. It's one of those key pieces. You've got to let other people do the driving in order for you to get on with your task, which is, as the business owner, the bigger picture stuff, the visionary stuff, the working on where you're taking the business next, the really leading, more leading and less managing.
Mm. It's like the car analogy. We can drive our own vehicle fast, but for most cars, you might be able to get 4 passengers in there. But if you can drive a bus, you might be able to take 30 or 40 passengers. But if you can learn to fly an aircraft, something like an A380, you might be able to get 580 passengers on there.
Mm-hmm.
But you've got to learn different skills along the way. But if you want to achieve a big goal, you need to have a lot of people's support. And you've got to take that handbrake off. That's a good thing about the aircraft. There is no handbrake. It's either chocks on or chocks off. That's it.
And
So the
reversed engines too, isn't it?
yeah, reversed thrust. But you can't rip the handbrake on the runway. That's a no go, that one. So the first one is control. What's another one of the 8 factors that you mentioned?
A really common one is scarcity thinking. And the scarcity thinking is really common in terms of time and in terms of money and in terms of support. So, you mentioned the thing about support. Most of us bring the scarcity thinking into the I'm too busy, I don't have enough time. And we bring it into also when we say, well, that's going to cost us money to do that. And so we spend our precious time doing stuff that we could buy in expertise, or we could buy in technology, or we could buy in, equipment that could do the thing and that we could get our time back. But we hang on with scarcity thinking and we sort of shut down any growth in that. We might say, well, maybe I'll do that next quarter, or and coaching might be the example of it, because we know that people that get coaches, have accelerated growth in their businesses and they're able to step back and have a look at their businesses. But in terms of investing in that, they don't look at the value or the return on investment. They just see it as an outgoing cost. So that scarcity thinking really is another one of those handbrakes on people. Um, and I think it's a really big one. We see it really commonly. We see it in our lives as well as our businesses. Yeah.
If you were in a room with a business person,
Mhm.
what does scarcity sound like? What are the words that they speak?
Oh, I'm just too busy. I just, there's not enough hours in the day. Where am I going to find the time to do that? You know, I, I, I'm working until 8 o'clock at night. Um, we can't afford it right now. Maybe we could do that next quarter. We're spending enough now. Those are probably the things I hear. We probably hear it more with people saying time, that's scarce of time, because they haven't put great structures in place in terms of their time management. They don't have the productivity hacks that they should have. They don't have protection over their calendar and their diary, and they haven't done a real analysis of where they're spending their time in their week and asking themselves that question of, is that where my energy is best invested? Is it on doing X, Y, and Z? Do I need to do that? Can I give it to someone else? Could I do that? And must I do this? Those three simple questions, and then doing a really clear audit of where they're spending their time is a real reality check of how we actually have. We all have 24 hours in our day. Are we really making great use of that time? You know, and I think that's probably how I would hear it more frequently, more now about time and less about money from people.
What's the neuroscience behind it? Because I believe that you specialize in this area of neuroscience, and there's definitely a connection between the way people think,
Mhm.
how they feel, and what they do or fail to do. So for these people who have this sickness of not enough, I don't have enough time. I have to do it later. I'll have to do it next quarter. I'm working to 8 p.m. every single night. I'm starting and I'm grinding. There's never enough time. That's how they're thinking. How does it feel? And what does it do to their actions or inactions?
Yeah, but essentially anything that we think and that we feel and that we speak about is a story. And it's generally based on our beliefs that we inherit from our childhood, from the ages of 0 to 7, and then that's embedded from ages 7 to 12. So we probably have heard something and we've had it embedded in our childhood, and it, or you might have heard the language of the self story, and it's the beliefs playing out. From a neuroscience perspective, our mind's only job is to really keep us safe. There's parts of our brains that are very ancient, called the limbic part of our brain, and it's that prehistoric brain that when we see threat, that we actually, our instinct is to go into a sympathetic nervous system response and fight, flight, or freeze. All right. So we see a challenge to our thinking, like, a question from a coach that says, where are you spending your time? Or let's put some time into something. The immediate response is, I don't have time. The story comes from an old story from childhood. And the brain is having that instant defensive response because it's trying to stop the threat being me asking the question. All right. Now, the process is when we have a thought, there's generally an emotion attached to it. And then the language that we speak is a reflection of those thoughts. So if I learn, for example, that as a child, that money is the root of all evil, let's say, we heard as our kids that money doesn't grow on trees, and, money is the root of all evil, that sort of thing, that builds a financial scarcity piece. If I hear that over and over again and I take that on, and I myself as an adult tell myself that money is the root of all evil, then that will play out as a thought. And then the feeling I have it might be fear about money. It might be worry about money. it might be concern, it might be anxiety. It could be a combination of all of those things. It might be anger. So I have a thought, and the next thing that comes in is an emotion. Okay. And then when I have an emotional response, I create more thinking. And then more thinking creates a higher level of emotion. And then I create more thinking about it, and then more emotion, and more thinking, and more emotion, until we've got this really heightened state of emotions and lots of thinking about it. And that embeds a pathway in our brain through our neurons, like a superhighway in our brain. And so we embed those thoughts, feelings. And then because we think something and we feel something strongly, money is the root of all evil. I feel fear, worry, anxiety. We then create behaviors, or our actions are reflections of those things. Thinking, feeling, speaking is just a reflection of that. Our words are our thoughts. And then we do the actions. A bill comes into my inbox, and my instant reaction is emotional stress, worry, anxiety. And inside my brain, I say, money is a worry, right? Uh, Somebody speaks about the cost of something, I don't know, concert tickets to go and see Taylor Swift. And my instant response is, oh, money, worry, anxiety, thought, money is evil, money is worry, money is stressful. So that sort of dictates. And we get into this cyclic pattern. And it's in the breaking of those patterns and asking the questions of, is that a helpful and healthy way of thinking? Is that a helpful and healthy pattern for me moving forward in my life? What do I want to do with that pattern? I'm going to shine a light on it, have a look at it and see if it's helpful. And do I want to change that? What do I want to do? That's kind of the bringing understanding to it. And then the follow up is obviously some actions to break that pattern.
And it's now 7 p.m. at night and I haven't done a thing all day. And now I've got to work till 8 o'clock to make up the time. Must be
And
exhausting.
you can keep telling yourself that. Yes, absolutely.
A lot of people in business will just say somewhere between ages of 30 to 55, some a little bit earlier, some a little bit later. And they're probably asking themselves, what has my life from the past, age 0 to 7, how does that have anything to do with what's happening in my business today? I'm 50 years old.
Mhm.
What's that connection? And you mentioned it, so it must be important. What happens in those early stages of our life that impact us today?
Yeah, it's a great question, Daniel. We don't have control over our beliefs. You know, those initial laying down of beliefs, because we are children and we are impressionable, we're like little sponges. And we don't develop a frontal lobe, that ability to make really good decisions about what we think, until we're in our early 20s. Our brains take a long time to develop that part of our brain. So we're these little sort of impressionable sponges, and those beliefs get absorbed, and we pick them up from parents, adults, impressionable people, and significant events as well. Significant events, when they happen and they happen with enough emotion, they'll embed with just one instance. And I'm sure we all know when we can recall something that someone said to us, or for me, like the death of our dog as a kid. I can tell you about that day. I can tell you the song that was playing. I can tell you everything and where I was, what I was wearing, everything, because it was one event, but it had a lot of emotion around it. So those things are embedded in our minds, um, and and they stay with us until we make an active choice to challenge those beliefs, to actually have a look at it and unpack it. And even when we do challenge them, we have to consider that there'll be a part of them, it will still come up in our minds. They'll still rear their ugly heads, because they've got a very strong neural tract, like a superhighway, in our mind. If we were told as children, boys are better at maths than what girls are, that's a bit of a classic, right? Or you're no good at maths, or you're no good at sport. You know, if we hear those things from a very young age, as a kid, we'll go, Oh, wow, girls are no good at maths. Oh, I'm no good at sport, no good at activity. And we'll take those stories in and we hear people say, oh, I'm no good at maths. You know, I'm never been very good at maths. Oh, don't show me the financials. Like they won't look at their zero account. They'll have an ostrich head in the sand approach to
Mm,
looking at their financials and getting to know and learning the financials of business, which is critical for business success. But they'll have this fear response because they were told they were no good at maths. And like if you ask them and you unpack it and we spend time having a look at it, we'll generally find that that thinking comes back to something that happened in their childhood. And it's not, for me, mindset business coaching is not about unpacking trauma as children and taking people through trauma again. That's not what this is about. We would never want that for anybody. It is giving people the opportunity to say, well, you know, perhaps that came from there and this is where that came from. And what do I want to do with that now?
mm.
Yeah, acknowledge that it sits there, and then maybe we can change our relationship with it. Maybe we can sit with that. Maybe we can set that up. So majority of we have very little control over our beliefs in terms of where they were first established. We do have control as adults, as a 50-year-old, if that's the case, to have a look at them and say, that's interesting, isn't it? What do I want to do with that now? There are many adults walking this planet, many people that actually pass away that take very childlike states with them, very much so.
So when I pick up my phone and I want to make a telephone call, my grandmother's face comes back to my mind and says, phone calls are expensive. You have to make a list of everything before you call them. And before you call your mum, make sure you write a list for everybody else. Okay, I just won't make the phone call.
There it is.
It's interesting.
It's funny how those little things pop up.
Yes. My grandmother, she passed away very financially successfully, financially with a lot of financial success. We could say that. But she was a penny pincher. So she had a business. She operated it till she was in her 80s, and she would turn all the lights off in the business. So you'd walk into the retail shop and all the lights are off. And I'd be walking in there going, what's going on? It's like a dungeon. Grandmother, what are you doing? Electricity is expensive. Can't turn the lights on. I'm like, but what about your customers? Oh, they'll be fine. I'm like, this is supposed to be a wonderful experience. My uncle, he's a real penny pincher. And I remember it must have been the mid-1990s. And a lot of people in Australia in the mid-1990s, around Christmas time, somebody would come around to the business and they would paint Christmas icons on the windows. They'd put Christmas trees, Santa Claus, we wish you a Merry Christmas. And my uncle had the same spray painted window display 365 days of the year for about 3,650 days. That's how much of a tight ass he was. He was the local dry cleaner, owned 3 dry cleaners, yet he was the most scruffy looking guy you've ever seen. He was the boot maker who didn't polish his own boots. His pants were too big, his shirts didn't fit, and he had a tailor. And I'd look at him and say, you're just like your mother. And in my life, there's been a series of patterns where we're all business people, but I have to be very consciously aware because my grandmother was a dressmaker, my mother was a dressmaker, and I also owned a clothing manufacturing business, had 50 shops around the country selling my clothes. But I had to get out those bad behaviors, those old thoughts that existed within me if I wanted to grow the business. And I remember one time I was on a sales adventure, and my job was to hop into my Mercedes van and I would drive around the east coast of Australia. I'd go from Sydney to Brisbane, down to Melbourne. I'd come across to South Australia. I'd go to Renmark, and I'd ring my brother and say, people love the designs of the clothes, but they don't like the colour. He said, what do you mean they don't like the colour? I said, they love the design. These guys just don't want to wear pink shirts in Queensland, South Australia, or Perth. They said, we will take as many as you can give us as long as it's black. Well, what did they know about it? I said, Ben, they're the customer. If they want a black shirt, like Cindy's wearing, give them a black shirt. But I could see these old family patterns come up. You know, I've done this, I've designed this, this is mine. People should take it how it is. And that created conflict within the business. Two business partners came out of the same womb, but two different thoughts. The same upbringing, but very different behaviors later on. And I've seen this personally in business, and it's very frustrating because it has nothing to do with the present moment. It has a lot to do with that programming. Those, what does Dr. Bruce Lipton call them? BS, belief systems, which he calls the bullshit stories.
Yeah. And you know, our ability to recognize patterns, pattern recognition, and then to be able to identify creative solutions within those patterns, be able to understand the patterns is a critical skill in life as in business. You know, it's basically the lesson of history, isn't it? Having a look at the various different patterns that occur, but in business and in ourselves, we don't seem to apply that theory in terms of the patterns of our thinking.
Mm.
And so when we're given the opportunity to sit down and sort of unpack that and do some self-reflection and get asked the right questions, then we can bring awareness to it and ask ourselves, you know, is that what I want? Is that the way to think? Is that going to help me? You know, why don't they love pink shirts? Is a great example of, you know, the control piece about I should know, I should be able to do this. Well, you know, we do see conflict occur because of that closed mindset or that belief that I've got to keep thinking this way instead of the possibility of thinking a different way for a different outcome. And it's uncomfortable. Change is uncomfortable. The mind is really challenged by it because anything that isn't familiar for the brain gets the same sort of fight, flight, freeze response. This isn't familiar. I don't know what this is. Not having a glass of wine at night is really uncomfortable. This is unfamiliar. I don't know how to relax because I'm not used to this. All right. All delegating and not doing the bookkeeping. Oh, wow, this is uncomfortable. I'm not used to this. And so the mind brings in a threat-based sort of response until we get to a place whereby we identify as someone quite different who thinks quite differently. And it is uncomfortable. Change is that discomfort, and it's hanging in there and fighting not less fighting, but accepting the neurobiological response that is physical as well as thought-based in that space that helps us create change when we identify as someone quite different. Not a business doer, but a business owner, someone who doesn't have a job, they actually have a business.
Maybe this is the problem. When we're born, we don't get a warranty. Where if you buy a computer, you get a warranty. The software's covered. And if there's a problem with the software on the computer, immediately you get it solved. You get it sorted out. If there's a problem with your engine of your vehicle, or if there's a weird sound on your car, or if you pump the brakes and they don't work and the car's under warranty, you take it back for a service. We naturally do that. But with our own mind, we don't have a warranty. And it's like, oh shit, who's going to pay for this? I better just ignore it and hope that it goes away. But if the brakes didn't work on the car, we wouldn't blame the driver. If the engine was malfunctioning, if the electronics weren't working, we'd never blame the driver. We'd say it's a problem with the vehicle. Like with our mindset, it's a problem with the thinking. It's not a problem with you as an individual. It's just the brain's not wiring. The software here needs a bit of an upgrade. How do we upgrade our software? Well, it comes through language, the way that we speak to ourselves or the way that others speak to us. Like you mentioned before, you suggest something from that helicopter perspective. You say, hey, are you aware of this? Oh my gosh, never noticed it. Like in a car, we've got blind spots. Just because there's somebody in your blind spot and you change lanes doesn't make you a bad driver. You just couldn't see it. Those things we've got to attend to. And I think
I think one of the greatest gifts we have. Sorry, mate, go on.
with driving a car.
I think one of the
Well, we've got a bit of a lag. With driving a vehicle, we tend to get lessons, and we get lessons from age 16 to age 17. And the intention of the lessons is to pass the test. We get the test and we get the license, and then we drive every day. But we can drive with bad habits every single day. And if we drive with bad habits, those bad habits strengthen over time. And we've all been on the road when there's somebody with very bad driving skills. They drive too slow, they drive too fast, they brake too late, they forget to indicate. I saw the news the other day, somebody was driving down the wrong side of the road. And so most of us go through life and we never get another driving lesson. I've asked people before, how do you know you're a good driver? And they think about it and say, well, I haven't had an accident. Okay, so you haven't had an accident. That makes you a good driver, does it? Well, it must. Okay, just out of curiosity, how many times have the police pulled you over and complimented you on your driving skills? You've been driving for 30 years. Have the police pulled you over and complimented you? No. Do you have people lining up out the front of your house to come in for driving lessons? No. When was the last time you got a driving lesson? 30 years ago? How do you know you're a good driver? Well, I haven't had an accident.
I think that's probably that. That's probably the case between consciousness and unconsciousness, because from the driving perspective, you can unconsciously drive, particularly with automatic cars now. You can get from A to B, and you can ask yourself the question, "I don't know how I got here." Oh, I don't remember. You know what I mean? I don't actually remember, because it's not a conscious thought. We're not bringing it to the forefront of our mind, and that's what I'm attempting to do when I work with a lot of business owners is bring stuff to the forefront for them to have a look at, for me to notice different patterns in their thinking, in the way they're doing, in the way they're operating. Don't get me wrong, I love processes and systems. I love HR. I love all the different, the financials, the parts of business. But the mindset piece is, I think, the biggest handbrake in that space. And one of the greatest gifts that we have with our minds, we're the only species that has this, is metacognition. And metacognition is the mind's ability to observe itself. So, when someone pulls out in front of us, we can notice through metacognition, we can go, oh, wow, I feel really angry about that. Or, oh, wow, I didn't realize I swore so much with the kids in the back of the car. It's an ability to bring mindfulness to our own thinking. That's a very powerful tool in observing our thinking and our beliefs and our physiological responses to the emotions that we bring to the surface. And it's a great tool in order to use and break habits or patterns in our way of thinking and in our changes that we want to bring in our businesses.
We know from sports, if we look at a Formula One racing team, the driver doesn't do it all alone. There's a board of directors, there's investors, there's consultants, there's coaches, there's advisors, there's mechanics. The mechanics have different specializations. Some people just take the tires off. Some people just fuel the vehicle. Some people just work on the electrics. Some people just work on the electronics. Some people just work on the aerodynamics. And it takes thousands of people to keep an F1 driver on the track. They might be the star of the show. They might be frontline, but there's so many backline and sideline people to support them. And we know that the people with the best teams win more often, but they're getting good advice. In your 30 years in personal development, what are some of the transformations that you've seen from before and after? What does it look like when you've met somebody and they haven't had a coach? They get coaching from you. And then how does life get better for them after that? What's the transformation?
For over 15 years, having delivered around 10,000 hours of coachings to over 200 different businesses, I can just reflect on, for example, yesterday I spoke to an individual, and having been in coaching for 3 months with me, she's announced that she lost 12 kilograms of weight from her perspective as a business owner and looking, she wanted to focus on her health. Another couple that I'm working with who have a significant business had their greatest turnover last month, only working with me for roughly 60 days. And so their profit for the month alone was over $265,000, which was their largest month ever, because we managed to get them to identify the key tasks that had the greatest leverage within their business and bring their focus onto those tasks. Stop them from being busy and started them doing the work that they needed to focus on. Another client who struggling to get clients into their book is now full, is at capacity, is bringing their product online and taking it internationally. So they went from being very much in the red to having some significant money in the bank. So they've got their emergency fund and they're building up their long-term investment savings. There's various businesses that have returned their investment in coaching in the first 30 days of working with me, because we're managing to very quickly identify the patterns that bring them the greatest results. I think those are some of the key sort of successes that I'm working with at the moment. Someone who is running 3 separate businesses as a businesswoman is having month after month growth in profit margins, not just turnover. Turnover has a degree of, you need turnover, but it's kind of irrelevant unless you've got really good profit margins. Each month we managed to not only increase the turnover, but also increase the profit margin so that she's taking home more dollars in her bank for her financial security and to grow and expand the business in the way. And we've needed to recently completely shift the focus of her business because of the challenge of AI in her industry. And it's been that quick adaptability and refocus, which was a big change for her, that's enabling her to absolutely outstrip her competitors in that space. Those are probably some of the most recent results that have given me a great deal of satisfaction. I get more joy out of seeing other people's success.
With results like that, their bank won't be angry, their credit card won't be angry, their partner won't be angry, their kids won't be angry. What a big transformation. Yeah, Cindy, you're going to finish writing your book very soon. What's the book about, and where will we be able to find a copy?
Yeah, thank you, Daniel. The book is called Manifest You, and it's essentially, through this conversation, we've kind of unpacked a fair bit of what it's about. It's essentially saying that your business can only grow as far as what you can. And so the title reads, Release the 8 handbrakes on your growth and build the business you always knew was possible. So we look specifically at those 8 sort of mindset pieces. We've mentioned some of them, scarcity thinking, name a few others. It will be out from the 1st of July. It's just gone to the publishers now. It will be available online at Amazon. And obviously, through the website, mindgarage.com.au, there'll be a link in there as well. So it's specifically targeting business owners to help them be even more successful in their businesses through having a look at their identity and their internal growth.
Cindy, thank you so much. And I've enjoyed our time together. Thank you so much.